Sec 3 NA Mathematics, Chapter 5, Coordinate Geometry, Part 3. Now, in this part, we are going to review how do we find equation of line given 2 points and finding equation of parallel lines. Now, let's try to recall a little bit from our previous lesson. To find the equation of a line between two given points, we are going to do a couple of steps. First step, any equation is given by y equals to mx plus c. So we need to know the m and the c. M, which means is the gradient. C is the y-intercept. So now in this case, I'm going to look for even any 2 points. I'm going to look for first one, number 1, find the gradient. How do we find the gradient? Given 2 points, we have the formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So after we know the gradient, number 2, step 2, you write down y equals to mx plus c. Just that in this case, our m, we are given the number already. So I'm going to change this m to a different color. So we already know what is m, and we want to find c. How do we find c? We can substitute a point, any point, with x equals to one number and y equals to another number, any point that passes through that straight line. Okay, in order to find c, and step 3, we write down the equation, okay, of the straight line. Now, let us recall a little bit how do we find equations of parallel lines. Now, when we have parallel lines, what do they share? They have the same gradient. So parallel lines have the same gradient. So if I need to know the equation for the second line from the very first line, what I need to do, number 1, is to find the gradient first. That is given to you through the first line. And then you do the same thing, you find the y-intercept. Then finally, you write the equation. But when you find the y-intercept or whichever, you sub a point on the correct line. Okay? And then after that, you write down your equation. Now, if you don't understand what we're talking about, it's okay. We shall move on with go through some of the examples that remaining from the previous lesson. So we left off with this over here, and then we are supposed to find the equations for these few lines. Now, take a look at the few special cases over here. I have this one to be B, part B. This is actually a vertical line, and a vertical line only cuts the x-axis. At this case is number -2. So therefore this equation is x equals to -2. There'll be no y at all. Okay, and we have part D. Now this is a horizontal line. It cuts only the y-axis at the number -9. So therefore this line is given by y equals to -9. So these are the special cases where we do not need to use y equals to mx plus c because of vertical or horizontal line that only cuts one particular axis. Now let's recall a little bit how do we find the equation of this line over here. Now given this line, I have 2 points, this and this. So what we can do, first step to find, starts with G, the gradient. So gradient is given by y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So this is x1 y1, x2 y2. Okay, so I can read my numbers easily. So in this case, 0 minus 3, 8 minus 0. And that gives you -3 over 8. So now we know the gradient, we can write down the equation. Y equals to mx plus c. M is -3 over 8. X plus the y-intercept. Now, we can see over here, what's the y-axis? The y-axis here give you the number 3. So the y-intercept will be 3. We don't even need to work out the Okay, and can get the answer. Have you gotten the answer? Similarly, I'll do part G. So G over here has 2 points, and we know that this point over here, it cuts the y in axis, so the y-intercept is the number -4. So I'm going to save a little bit of time down here, given the diagram this way. So it cuts two axes, x and the y-axis, so the equation will be y equals to mx plus c. But before we begin the first step, we're going to find the gradient. So the gradient will be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that will give me 4 over 3. Take note of the negative sign. So gradient for equation for straight line will be y equals to 4 over 3 x plus c. But we know our y-intercept here, in this case, this picture tells us that is -4. So y equals to 4 over 3x minus 4. Have you gotten the answer? Well, if you've gotten the concept, you'll leave this part of the question here for you to do as practice on your own. We'll review and check the answers tomorrow. So now let me go on to the next part of our concept. Example H. So now we have this one over here. 2 points again. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. What are the steps involved to find the equation of this line? First step, to find the gradient. So to find the gradient, we have y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So this is 0 minus -2. Be careful of the sign. So in this case, I'll get a gradient 3. So equation of straight line, y equals to 3mx, so 3x plus c. In this case, we can observe, there you know, you sub the point. What is the y value over here? The y-intercept is the number 6. So we can have this answer. Have you gotten the answer? Next part of our concept, parallel lines in their gradient. Now when two lines are parallel, what does that mean? That means the slope is the same, right? So if the slope is the same, the two lines will have the same gradient. Okay, so if the two lines have the same gradient, line AB is parallel to this particular line. Write down the gradient of AB. Now gradient of AB will be equal to the gradient of this line. What's the gradient of this line? We have y equals to mx plus c, and the m is 2. So in this case, the gradient of this line, gradient of AB will be 2. Now we know that the gradient of AB is 2. They tell us that second part, AB passes through the point A to be this. So how do I find the equation of this straight line? Y is now equals to mx plus c. The m is the gradient 2x plus c. So now how to find the y-intercept? I know x is equals to 3, y equals to -4. Is AB passes through the point A. So y is -4, 2 times 3 plus c. So -4 equals to 6 plus c. C will be -4 minus 6. C will be equals to -10. But is this the equation? No, right? The equation will be y equals to 2x minus 10. And this will be the answer. Have you gotten the answer? Now I shall try question B, and I'll leave the next page for you as your own practice. Question B. The line KL is parallel to y equals to 3x equals to 2. And K is that particular point. So if I want to find the equation of KL, KL means is parallel. Parallel means the gradient comes from this equation. How do I find the gradient? Now this equation here, y plus 3x equals to 2, is it of the form y equals to mx plus c? Not yet, right? So let's rearrange this and make it equals to y equals to negative 3x plus 2. This is the line that KL is parallel to. If KL is parallel to this line, what's the gradient of this line? That means the gradient of KL will now be the gradient of this line to be negative 3. So now I know gradient of KL is negative 3. So equation for KL will be y equals to negative 3x plus c. How do we find c now? They tell me k is the number to negative 7. KL will pass through the point k. So x is equals to 2, y equals to negative 7. So minus 7 equals to negative 3 times x plus c. Negative 7 equals to negative 6 plus c. Negative 7 plus 6 equals to c. c equals to negative 1. So therefore, equation of this line is y equals to negative 3x minus 1. Have you gotten the answer? Now, in the last lesson, we have mentioned about parallel lines. Okay, so in order to find equation of parallel lines, we must first understand the concept that number one, when two lines are parallel, okay, the two lines have the same gradient. So what we do is, now first step, we need to, given the first line, okay, we need to first identify the gradient. So we found the gradient in this case, this example, to be minus 3. And then after that, we use it to find the equation of a new line. Now, without further ado, let us practice the last question that we have. Now, next, question C, and over here, I'll leave you to do the answers and practice on your own. So we'll review these questions in the next lesson. See ya! Okay, question C. Given that line L is parallel to line H with this particular equation, write down the gradient of line L. Now the gradient of line L is equals to the gradient of line H, but equation of H is given to be 2y plus 3x equals to 1. Is this of the form y equals to mx plus c? Then what can we do? So we're going to shift this. This is 2y to be equals to, remember we will put the x first and then the number at the back. So it'll be negative 3x plus 1. Y equals to mx plus c. So then now I don't want 2y. So I can have y to be, I'm going to divide individually by 2. Divide individually by 2. If this is the case, what can you read for the gradient? Y equals to mx plus c. So the m is the gradient, negative 3 over 2. So now I know that the equation for this straight line is, the gradient here is negative 3 over 2. I can start off with my second step. Y equals to negative 3 over 2x plus c. Then they tell me that this line L passes through this particular point. So x will be the number 8, y will be the number negative 12. So we're going to replace y now becomes the number negative 12. Negative 3 over 2, x now becomes the number 8 plus c. And then we'll get, try to simplify, we'll get negative 12 equals to negative 12 plus c. So what does this tell me about c? Therefore, c is equals to 0. If c is equals to 0, then my equation will be just y equals to negative 3 over 2x. Do I need to write plus 0? No need. So this is my equation. Okay, let's look at question D. So question D over here. Given that line CD is parallel to this particular line and it passes through this point, find the equation of line CD. So now if it's parallel, that means it's equals to the gradient. So from y equals to 1 over 4x plus 5, you compare it, y equals to mx plus c. What is the gradient? The gradient will be 1/4. So we know the gradient is 1/4, 1 over 4. So now we can start to find the equation of our line. We will have y equals to 1 over 4x plus c. Now how do I find the y-intercept? I'm given the following point. So x is equals to 16, y equals to negative 8. So negative 8 equals to 1/4 times 16 plus c. So negative 8 equals to 4 plus c. C will be equals to negative 12. Now how do I write the equation? I will have y equals to 1/4 x, and the c now is minus 12. Have you gotten the answer? Now we come to the end of this part of the chapter, but we're going to do a little bit more of the different types of skills and practice questions in the next few lessons.